I was folding laundry in my small apartment when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my son Marcus, and the words made my blood run cold. "Mom, I'm getting married next week in Vegas. Couldn't invite you. Too expensive. By the way, I sold your restaurant to pay for the wedding and honeymoon. You'll get 20% since you can't run it anymore anyway. Thanks for understanding. Mom." 43 years I had poured my heart into that little Italian restaurant. 43 years of 14-hour days, burned fingers, aching feet, and dreams of passing it down to my only child. And he had reduced it all to a text message. "My name is Elena Rossi. I'm 68 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my son." I had been forced to step back from the restaurant 6 months ago when the doctors diagnosed me with severe arthritis in my hands, the same hands that had kneaded thousands of pounds of pasta dough, the same hands that had built Nana's Kitchen from nothing into the most beloved family restaurant in our neighborhood. "It's just temporary, Ma," Marcus had said when he offered to help run the business. "You rest up, get your treatments, and when you're feeling better, we'll run it together like we always planned." I should have seen the signs. The way he started changing the menu without asking me, how he began referring to it as his restaurant when talking to suppliers, the expensive suits he suddenly started wearing, paid for with money I assumed came from his marketing job. But I trusted him. He was my son, my only child, after his father died 10 years ago. I had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities I never had. College, travel, connections. I worked double shifts so he could study abroad in Italy, learning about our heritage and the culinary traditions I wanted him to carry forward. The restaurant wasn't just a business to me. It was my legacy, my love letter to the family recipes passed down from my grandmother. Every marinara sauce was made from her secret recipe. Every meatball was rolled with the same technique she taught me when I was 7 years old. The brick oven in the back? I had saved for 3 years to import those bricks from Naples. Marcus knew all of this. He had grown up in that kitchen, helping me after school, listening to the stories of how Nana had fed her family of 12 during the Depression with nothing but creativity and love. Or so I thought he had been listening. I sat in my small living room, the apartment I had moved to when I could no longer manage the stairs above the restaurant, and read his text message 5 more times. Each reading brought a new wave of disbelief. He was getting married to Candace, a woman I had met exactly twice. Both times, she had looked at me like I was an inconvenience, speaking to Marcus in front of me, as if I wasn't there. "Marcus, honey, when are you going to modernize this place? All this old world stuff is so dated." I had bitten my tongue then, thinking she would learn to appreciate our traditions in time. Now I realized she had been planning to erase them entirely. But as I sat there, surrounded by the smell of the garlic and basil, I still kept on my windowsill. Something strange happened. Instead of crying, I smiled, because there was something my dear son didn't know about his old arthritic mother. The next morning, I called Dr. Martinez, my longtime family doctor who had been treating our family for 20 years. "Elena, how are the treatments going?" he asked in his warm voice. "Much better than expected, doctor. In fact, I wanted to ask you about something. Do you remember that conversation we had about my hands?" "Of course. I told you that with proper treatment and some lifestyle changes, there was no reason you couldn't continue cooking for many more years. The arthritis is manageable, not debilitating. And you said I should have told Marcus this, instead of letting him believe I was becoming disabled." "Yes, I was surprised when you asked me not to correct his assumptions. You said you wanted to see how he would handle responsibility." "Well, doctor, I think I've learned everything I needed to know." What Marcus didn't realize was that I had never intended to retire. The arthritis was real, but it was mild, manageable with medication and some adjustments to my routine. I had stepped back from the daily operations as a test, wanting to see if he truly understood the value of what we had built together. I had also never told him about the other investments I had made over the years. Every dollar I hadn't spent on myself had been carefully invested in small properties around the neighborhood. The building that housed our restaurant, I owned it. The 3 apartments above it that provided steady rental income, mine. the small grocery store 2 blocks down that supplied our fresh ingredients. I was the silent partner who had funded its expansion. Marcus thought he was inheriting a struggling family restaurant from his poor, sick mother. In reality, he had just stolen a thriving business from a woman who had spent decades building a small empire, one marinara sauce at a time. That afternoon, I walked slowly to the restaurant. My restaurant. For the first time in weeks, I had been staying away to give Marcus space to prove himself. Through the window, I could see the changes he had made. Gone were the checkered tablecloths my mother had sewn. Gone were the photos of our family and the old country. In their place were modern minimalist decorations that looked like they belonged in a chain restaurant. A sold sign hung in the window. I pushed open the door, and the familiar bell chimed, but even the sound was wrong. Marcus had replaced my grandmother's old brass bell with some modern electronic chime. "Ma!" Marcus looked genuinely surprised to see me. "What are you doing here? I thought the doctor said you needed to rest your hands." "I wanted to see the changes you made." He gestured proudly around the dining room. "What do you think? Candace has amazing taste. We're bringing this place into the 21st century." I looked at the walls where my family photos used to hang. "Where are the pictures of Nana?" "We put them in storage." Candace said they made the place look too ethnic. "We want to appeal to a broader customer base." Too ethnic. My Italian heritage, the very foundation of everything we had built, was too ethnic. And the menu? Completely revamped. We're doing fusion now. Italian-Asian, much more trendy. Candace has some amazing ideas about sushi pizza. Sushi pizza. In my grandmother's restaurant. "Marcus, do you remember the story I told you about how Nana started this place?" He looked uncomfortable. "May, we don't have time for stories right now. We're trying to finalize the sale before the wedding." "Who bought it?" "Some investment group. They're going to turn it into a fast casual concept. Think Chipotle, but with pasta. It's brilliant, really. My life's work was going to become a fast food assembly line." "And you're sure about this decision?" "Ma, look at yourself. You can barely hold a spoon anymore. This place was killing you. I'm doing what's best for both of us." I could barely hold a spoon. I had made fresh pasta for 15 people just 3 days ago in my apartment kitchen, testing new recipes while he thought I was too weak to cook. "I see. And when is this sale supposed to close?" "Next week, right after we get back from our honeymoon in Tuscany. Isn't that perfect? We're going to tour all the regions and learn about authentic Italian cooking." They were going to Italy with money from selling my restaurant to learn about the Italian cooking traditions I had spent my entire life preserving and trying to pass on to him. That night, I made a phone call to Anthony Pellegrino, the lawyer who had handled all my property investments over the years. Anthony's family had been customers at the restaurant since I opened, and he had watched Marcus grow up. "Elena, how are you feeling?" "Much better than my son thinks, Anthony." "I need to see you tomorrow. It's urgent." "Of course. What's going on?" "My son just sold my restaurant." There was a long pause. "Elena, I reviewed that sale contract when Marcus first asked me about the legal requirements. You're listed as the owner on all the documents. You can't sell without your signature." "That's exactly what I need to talk to you about." The next morning, I sat in Anthony's office reviewing the sale documents Marcus had somehow completed. The signature on the ownership transfer was mine, or rather, a very good forgery of mine. "Elena, this is fraud. Plain and simple. We can stop this sale immediately and press charges." "I don't want to press charges, Anthony. I want to do something else entirely." "What do you have in mind?" "I want you to help me teach my son the most important lesson of his life." Over the next week, while Marcus was busy planning his Vegas wedding and dreaming about his honeymoon in Italy, I was quietly putting my plan into motion. Anthony helped me document the forged signature and gather evidence of the fraudulent sale. But more importantly, he helped me understand exactly what assets I owned and how I could use them strategically. The building that housed the restaurant was mine, rented to the business for a nominal fee. When the sale fell through, which it would, the new buyers would discover they had purchased a business with no right to occupy its location. The apartment Marcus lived in? It was in the building I owned 2 blocks away. He had been living there rent-free for 3 years, thinking I was helping him save money. He had no idea his mother was his landlord. Even his job at the marketing firm was connected to me. I had recommended him to the owner, Vincent Carlucci, whose family had been coming to the restaurant for 20 years. Vincent had hired Marcus as a favor to me, and he had been asking me recently if I thought Marcus was really committed to the work, given how often he took time off for his restaurant responsibilities. Marcus had built his entire adult life on foundations I had quietly provided, and he had never even realized it. The wedding was on a Thursday. I knew this because Mrs. Chen from the grocery store told me her daughter worked at the wedding planning company and had seen Marcus's booking. A small ceremony at one of those Vegas chapels, followed by a reception for 12 people at a casino restaurant. 12 people. He hadn't even invited his own mother to his wedding. While he was exchanging vows with Candace, I was meeting with the investment group that thought they were buying a restaurant. When they discovered the sale was fraudulent and they couldn't access the property, they were understandably upset. But Anthony had negotiated a settlement that protected them from major losses while making it clear that Marcus would be responsible for any legal consequences of the fraud. I also had a long conversation with Vincent Carlucci about Marcus's work performance and his commitment to his job. Vincent was a good man, but he was also a businessman. When I explained the situation and suggested that Marcus might need some time to find himself, Vincent agreed that perhaps it was time for Marcus to explore other opportunities. Marcus and Candace returned from their honeymoon on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Marcus had discovered that his restaurant sale had fallen through. His job was being restructured, a polite way of saying he was being let go, and he had received an eviction notice for his apartment. The phone rang at 7 a.m. Ma, something terrible has happened. The restaurant sale. There's some kind of legal problem. They're saying I forged your signature, but that's impossible, right? You signed those papers. I had been waiting for this call for 2 weeks. Good morning, Marcus. How was Italy? May, did you hear what I said? There's a legal problem with the restaurant. What kind of legal problem? They're saying the sale was fraudulent, that I didn't have the right to sell. But that's crazy. You can barely function anymore. Of course I had to handle the business decisions. There it was again. His assumption that his arthritic mother was incompetent. And what did your lawyer say? I can't afford a lawyer. We spent all the money on the wedding and the honeymoon. Ma, I need your help. Can you come down to the restaurant and sort this out? I'm not sure I'm well enough to travel, son. My hands have been very painful lately. May, please. I'm desperate here. Candace is furious. She's saying maybe we should move to her parents' place in Arizona until this gets sorted out. Already, his new wife was planning their escape route. Let me see what I can do, Marcus. Maybe I can make some phone calls. That afternoon, I walked to the restaurant. It looked empty, with a temporarily closed sign in the window. Marcus was sitting inside at one of the tables, his head in his hands, surrounded by papers and legal documents he clearly didn't understand. When he saw me come in, he jumped up. May, thank God you're here. This is all such a mess. Tell me exactly what happened. He launched into a complicated explanation involving signatures and ownership documents and legal technicalities. What struck me was how he told the story as if he were the victim, as if these problems had simply appeared out of nowhere to complicate his life. Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure, Ma. When you decided to sell the restaurant, did you ever think about asking me first? May, we talked about this. You're sick. You can't run this place anymore. I was doing what was best for both of us. But did you ask me? He looked uncomfortable. I knew you'd say no because you're too sentimental about this place. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions for people when they can't make them for themselves. I see. And the wedding? Did you think about inviting me? Ma, the wedding was small. We kept costs down. You know how expensive travel is for you now, with all your medical issues. Medical issues. I walked 3 miles every morning and cooked elaborate meals daily, but in his mind, I was an invalid. Marcus, I want to show you something. I pulled out the folder Anthony had prepared for me, containing copies of all my property deeds, investment statements, and business records. What's this? These are the documents showing who actually owns this restaurant, this building, and the apartment where you live." Marcus flipped through the papers, his expression changing from confusion to shock to something like panic. "May, this says you own the building where I live." "Yes. And you own the restaurant building too." "Yes. And you have all these other properties and investments." "Yes." He looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't the look of a son seeing his mother. It was the look of someone realizing they had completely misjudged a situation. "How long have you owned all this?" 23 years for the first property. I've been building this portfolio slowly while you were growing up. But you always acted like money was tight. You worked so hard, you never took vacations, you drove that old car. I was building something, Marcus. Building security for our family and a legacy to pass down to you. And the arthritis? Your hands? Are fine, manageable with medication. I stepped back from the restaurant to see if you were ready to truly take responsibility for something meaningful. The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could see Mrs. Chen from the grocery store walking by with her daughter. Normal life continuing, while my son processed the fact that everything he thought he knew about his situation was wrong. "May, I don't understand. If you could have kept running the restaurant, if you have all this money, why did you let me think we were struggling?" "Because I wanted to see what kind of man I had raised. I wanted to know if you understood the value of family, tradition, hard work. I wanted to know if you would take care of me the way I had taken care of you your entire life. And you sold everything that mattered to me to pay for a party in Vegas." Marcus sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "Mama, I thought I was helping." "You thought you were helping by erasing our family history? By turning Nana's recipes into fusion food? By getting rid of the photos of your great-grandmother?" Candace said. "Candace doesn't know our family, Marcus. She doesn't know that this restaurant fed you when I couldn't afford babysitters. She doesn't know that I worked here when you had pneumonia at age 8, and I couldn't afford to take time off, so I made you a bed in the back room so I could take care of you and keep the business running. I walked over to the spot where my family photos used to hang. She doesn't know that your great-grandmother came to America with nothing but these recipes and the dream that her family would never go hungry again. To her, they're just old pictures making the place look too ethnic. To me, they're the reason this place exists." Marcus was crying now, something I hadn't seen since he was a child. "Ma, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I thought I was being practical. Practical would have been talking to me. Practical would have been asking questions instead of making assumptions. Practical would have been getting married somewhere your mother could attend. We can have another ceremony. We can invite everyone and—" "Marcus, that's not the point. The point is that when you had to choose between your family and your new life, you chose your new life. You didn't even hesitate." That evening I went home alone while Marcus stayed at the restaurant, probably trying to figure out his next move. I made myself a simple dinner, pasta with fresh basil from my windowsill, and thought about what comes next. The phone rang around 9 p.m. "May, it's me. I've been thinking all day about what you said. And I want to fix this. I want to make it right, but I don't know how. What do you think you should do?" I think I should start by apologizing. Really apologizing. Not just saying sorry because I got caught. Go on. "I'm sorry I sold the restaurant without asking you. I'm sorry I changed everything without understanding what it meant to you. I'm sorry I didn't invite you to my wedding, and I'm sorry I treated you like you were incompetent when you were actually taking care of me in ways I didn't even realize." It was a start. "And what about Candace?" There was a long pause. "I think Candace and I need to have some serious conversations about what kind of life we want to build together." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she married someone she thought was a successful restaurant owner. Turns out I'm an unemployed guy whose mother owns everything he thought was his. I need to find out if she's interested in being married to the real me." Over the next few weeks, I watched Marcus grapple with the reality of his situation. Candace, as I had suspected, was not interested in being married to a man with no business and no job. The annulment was quick, and, according to Marcus, surprisingly amicable. She said I was a nice guy, but she was looking for a different kind of life partner, he told me over coffee in my apartment. I think she was being polite. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved. When I really thought about it, I realized I was trying to be someone I'm not to impress her, someone who cared more about looking successful than about being connected to something meaningful. Marcus moved back into his old room in the apartment above the restaurant, the apartment I owned, though now he knew it. He also started working at the restaurant again, but differently this time. Ma, I want to learn everything. I want to know why you make the sauce that way, why you choose those particular tomatoes, what Nana told you about the importance of letting the dough rest. You want to learn to cook? I want to learn to carry on what you built, the right way this time. It wasn't easy. Marcus had spent years thinking he understood the restaurant business because he had grown up around it. Actually learning to cook, to manage suppliers, to connect with customers, that required humility he had never had to develop before. But I watched him change week by week. He started coming in early to help with prep work. He asked questions about family recipes instead of assuming he could improve them. He talked to our regular customers, really talked to them, and began to understand that they didn't come just for the food, but for the feeling of being part of something that had history and heart. Mrs. Patterson told me she's been coming here since her husband was alive. He told me one afternoon while we were rolling meatballs together. She said this place reminds her of their first date 30 years ago. And what did you think about that? I thought about how close I came to turning this into a fast food pasta place. We would have lost all that history, all those connections. 6 months later, Marcus was running the day-to-day operations again, but as a true partner this time. He had learned not just the recipes, but the reasons behind them. He understood now that our customers weren't just buying dinner, they were buying a connection to tradition, to family, to the idea that some things are worth preserving. Ma, I have an idea, he said one evening, as we were closing up. What if we started offering cooking classes? We could teach people to make Nana's recipes at home. You want to give away our secrets? I want to share our traditions. There's a difference. He was right, there was a difference, and the fact that he understood that difference told me he had finally learned what I had been trying to teach him. The cooking classes became popular quickly. Families would come in on Saturday mornings to learn to make pasta from scratch or to understand the art of building a proper marinara sauce layer by layer. Marcus proved to be a natural teacher, patient and encouraging in ways I hadn't expected. But more importantly, he had begun talking about the restaurant as ours again, not his. He asked my opinion on menu changes, on supplier decisions, on how to handle difficult customers. He had learned that experience has value, that tradition has meaning, and that family businesses succeed when they honor both innovation and heritage. 1 year after that terrible text message, Marcus asked me to sit down with him for a serious conversation. May, I've been thinking about something for months, and I need to ask you. What is it? I want to know if you think I'm ready. Ready for what? Ready for you to officially make me your partner. Not just someone who works here, but someone who owns part of this legacy and has the responsibility that comes with that. I had been waiting for this conversation, but I needed to be sure he understood what he was asking. What does being my partner mean to you? It means understanding that this restaurant isn't just a business, it's a trust. A trust from Nana to you and from you to me, and someday from me to my children if I'm blessed to have them. And what does that trust require? It requires respecting what came before while being thoughtful about what comes next. It requires remembering that we're not just feeding people food, we're feeding them connection, memory, tradition. And if you meet someone new, if you get married again, then I'll marry someone who understands that they're not just marrying me, they're joining a family that includes you and Nana's memory and this place that we built together. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The selfish young man who had sold my restaurant in a text message was gone. In his place was someone who understood responsibility, tradition, and the weight of carrying something forward that was bigger than himself. Yes, I said. I think you're ready. We spent that evening drawing up partnership papers with Anthony, but more importantly, we spent it talking about the future, about expanding the cooking classes, about maybe opening a second location that could serve a different neighborhood, about how to find the balance between honoring tradition and allowing for thoughtful growth. Ma, can I ask you something else? Of course. Do you forgive me? I mean, really forgive me? Marcus, I forgave you the day you started asking questions instead of making assumptions. But more importantly, you've learned to forgive yourself by becoming someone worthy of forgiveness. What do you mean? The Marcus who sold this restaurant doesn't exist anymore. You've become someone who would never make those choices. That's not just growth, that's transformation. As I write this, it's been 2 years since Marcus sent me that devastating text message. The restaurant is thriving under our partnership. The cooking classes have a 3-month waiting list. Marcus has met someone new, a woman named Sarah, who teaches at the local elementary school, and who spent her first visit here asking me questions about the family photos that are once again hanging on our walls. I want to learn about your traditions, she told me. Marcus talks about them with such pride now. Marcus has also used some of his savings to take me on a trip to Italy, not for a honeymoon, but to research our family history and learn about regional cooking techniques we might incorporate into our menu. We visited the village where my grandmother was born and met cousins I didn't even know we had. This is where it all started, Marcus said, standing in the kitchen of our distant cousin Maria, watching her make pasta exactly the way my grandmother had taught me 70 years ago. This is what I almost threw away. But he didn't throw it away. He almost did. But when he was given the chance to learn from his mistakes, he chose growth over defensiveness, humility over pride, tradition over trend. The hardest lesson I ever taught was to let my son believe he had lost everything so he could discover what was truly worth keeping. But it was also the most important lesson, because it gave him the chance to become not just my son, but my true partner in carrying our family's legacy forward. Sometimes love means letting people fall so they can learn how to stand on their own. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to prove they're better than their worst moment. Marcus proved that, and so much more. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.